Hi Lana, just been talking about colour. Now I just want to talk about the layout a little bit. I forgot to mention before when I was colouring this in, it took absolutely weeks and weeks just putting each colour next to each other and getting the right sort of the shading right. But anyway, back onto the layout. That's basically the Leeds owl. You've got a nice high impact image there, a close up of the owl. You can see the detail of the owl, the piercing stare. I've left my room for typography up in the corner there. My research shows that I believe about a quarter of my composition is more than enough there. I've got room underneath for the sponsors and what have you. Again here I've got some room there for my typography, sponsors in this bottom corner. I've then basically took the same owl, moved it back, and then I've pulled little bits of the polygon shape out, and then I've turned them into 3D imagery because I think it just looks a bit more. It's got a bit more impact, the 3D, and then I've made all these 3D shapes, and they were an absolute nightmare. Believe it or not, Illustrator, you cannot make a diamond shape. You have to actually go into the support files, draw yourself a little symbol tool and add that to the 3D tools and close the system down and start it back up again. And that was an absolute nightmare, but I was quite keen to get these diamondy type shapes in because I think they represent like jewels and precious stones slightly, and that just represents the diversity and the richness of the film that comes from the film festival, and that's falling from the Leeds owl, which is the main symbol of the film festival. So what could be more fitting than the films falling from the owl? It's also depicting Leeds. It's Leeds' identity has been stamped on it. I think that works quite nice. And then moving on, these are falling there towards the viewer and film clips in there. If we move over to this slide here, then we've got all my shapes moving over into the second one. It just allows for a little bit more of a close-up of the films, room for typography up here again, and then finish off with that piercing stare from the owl. And then what I've got here is I've got a lot more room for typography. I originally quite liked this negative space here and wanted the typography on its side on this one. However, it didn't work for the reasons of trying to get it to fit with the same look and feel of the other slides, and for that reason I didn't do it. If it had been a slide on its own, I would have much rather added that composition, but I had to sacrifice that composition basically to keep the same look and feel of the other slides, which I think I've got a little bit too attached to it, and I've got to take a step back and I've got to make it work as 4 slides, and I've got to be a bit more professional about it. Oh, the typography there, which I'll talk about later, but there's just all the examples I've been using. But anyway, yeah, going back to the reason I mentioned in the first slide how long it took me to do all this colouring in is basically it's just taken me forever, and it's been a bit of a learning curve with deadlines like you would be in the industry, not to take on too much. And now I've coloured all that in. I got to a stage where I was panicking like mad and I don't know how I'm going to get the second owl done. So my first thoughts was do another slide like this somehow, continue the theme through, but I wasn't overly keen with that. It went against all my build up and my layout pad and everything, all the work I'd done. So with time ticking, I had a bit of a brainwave, and basically I can't believe it's actually worked. But I took the original owl, flipped it, and ended up with a head on the opposite direction because I wanted it. I don't know why, I just wanted it on the left side because I think it works quite well on the left side. People read left to right, and the first thing they're going to look at is a piercing stare, which I wanted the viewers to drawn in by. And then basically I've taken this head I've cut all this section off round the back and pushed it into this composition, and then what I did was, that's from the original owl, so it looks like it's staring down. I wanted it staring at the viewer, so I basically turned it to outlines, got it in position, and then I started selecting all these little points with a direct selection tool, over and over like that, and then basically move it. Well, I'm not on the direct selection tool, but basically moving. We'll do it in a minute. And I started basically moving and twisting all these bits around, and I managed to form the face into one that was actually staring at you, and I've ended up with this from that, which I'm really pleased about. And I've even managed to have this little cutting on the eye, which makes it look like it's actually scowling at you, because I was quite keen to get the eye right, because that's another symbol of cinema and film that other film festivals are tapping into. I originally wanted imagery within the eye, but you can see the eye is much too small in the composition to fit imagery in, and I've just been overcomplicating things. And I think the actual owl stood staring at you without, like, I'd have had to zoom right in for you to see the imagery in the eye. I think pulling it back and the owl staring at you like that is a much stronger image, and I'm much more pleased with that. I think it's strong enough without the imagery in the eye. We've got all the imagery from films in the other one. And then finish off with that piercing stare. And I think another thing to remember is it's quite effective, because you can always see somebody staring at you, even if it's out of the corner of your eye. So if you've got that owl staring at you, God knows how many foot tall from a building, you're not going to miss that. That's going to get your attention, is that. Yep. And going back to these imagery that I then put on the shapes, what I've done is I've done a lot of messing about with them, trying to get them to look right with because it's a vector image, and I've actually, in the end, I've just ended up vector tracing them. But what I did, I tried all sorts, removing colours, filters. I've actually put a grain filter over the top of it as well as vector tracing it, but I also have tried some Photoshop filters, some of the effects in Illustrator, and just to try and make them look a bit more, not painted, but just fit with the aesthetics a little bit more. Can't remember which effect it was. I'll have to have a look before. I can't even remember which one I used. It was remove. You remove some elements of the. It looks almost like an image trace, but you get a much more random look to it. But then I went back to the image trace because it wasn't as clear.